So back in 2016, when I was a senior in high school, I posted my first ever YouTube video. It was a song cover for my UC application, and I got denied from UCLA. I did get in UC Irvine though. Then in 2019, as a sophomore in college, I decided to start posting on YouTube consistently, and I posted one video per week for an entire year. And I couldn't even get to 1,000 subscribers. And eventually, March 2020 came by, basically when the whole world shut down. I was like, you know what? Let me give this fitness thing a chance. 4 years later, I stand here with 1 million of you guys. I would have never imagined when I started I would be in the position I am today. Early on, like high school days, I basically taught myself how to work out from YouTube. So being in the position I am now to kind of pass it forward and pass on the knowledge to the next generation, honestly, it's crazy to me. Really, it feels like a childhood dream of mine has been accomplished. So as a way to say thank you for 1 million subscribers, I'm gonna be revealing the best exercise for every single muscle group in my humble opinion. These are all my favorite exercises, so let's get into it. Now, keep in mind, this list isn't meant to be a full workout routine, but I would recommend trying to incorporate these exercises in your overall routine and just see if it's gonna be comfortable for you. With that said, let's get to the first muscle, which is gonna be chest. All right, so my favorite chest exercise is the incline dumbbell bench press. Now, there's a lot of reasons why I like this exercise. First off, upper chest tends to be a lagging body part in most individuals, so having some sort of upper chest exercise is probably a good idea. But I think further than that, I actually find an incline press to be more comfortable on my shoulder than a flat press because of my arch. But outside of just feeling comfortable for me, this exercise is also, in my opinion, pretty optimal for overall chest growth. Because for one thing, it's lengthen focused, meaning the hardest part is gonna be in the bottom position when the chest is actually stretched, which is important because the chest is a muscle that tends to benefit from stretch mediated hypertrophy. There's a lot of evidence showing that training the muscles at longer lengths is gonna be beneficial for hypertrophy. I've mentioned it numerous times. But not only is this exercise lengthen focused, I also find that out of any other chest variation, barbell, machine, cable, if people do cable presses, using dumbbells allows me to get the best range of motion, meaning I'm able to get as deep as possible compared to the other variation. Not to mention that the movement's also isolateral, meaning each pec is responsible for its own weight. So if you tend to get muscle imbalances, this is also a good option. And because it's a free weight dumbbell exercise, it's quite ergonomic. You can kind of switch your shoulder position, wrist position in a way that would be comfortable for you. All right, now moving on to back exercises. So choosing one exercise is hard because obviously there's so many different back exercises. You can do a vertical pull or a horizontal pull, but if I had to choose one, it would be the conventional lat pull down bar done with a wide grip with the conventional lat bar. Now, first off, I'm gonna talk about why a vertical pull over a horizontal pull. Personally for me, I just find it more comfortable. I don't have to worry about like breathing on a chest supported row or anything. I also find it more comfortable training my lats versus like my mid back or something. So obviously you should be doing both, but if I had to choose one exercise, it would be something like this. There's many different attachments you can use on a lat pull down. A lot of people like the mat grip, but I personally like the conventional lat pull down bar like this. I take a wide pronated grip. I can actually get my fingers around the bar so my grip becomes less of a limiting factor. And at the same time, it's a very stable movement because I'm able to be anchored down without really any trade-offs I can find on this exercise. So overall, wide grip lat pull down, that's gonna be my favorite back exercise. Moving on to the third exercise. All right, now on to exercise number 3, which is triceps. And that's gonna be the unilateral cable tricep extension. This is my favorite tricep exercise for a few reasons. First off, I prefer training the triceps unilaterally because it's a lot more ergonomic. It's very freeing. You can really play around with the angles. If this doesn't feel that comfortable for you, you can take another step back, and you're really just not as limited compared to if you're using like a rope tricep pushdown where you can't really extend with this natural elbow flare. Now, out of all the muscles, this one was probably the most difficult for me to decide because I also really like the unilateral overhead tricep extension. But with that said, this gets a slight edge because it's easier to set up. You don't have to worry about swinging your body and getting your arm across or anything. On top of that, this is gonna be a more long head biasing tricep exercise, which I think gives you the biggest bang for your buck. The long head is, of course, the largest part of the triceps. It's like this inner part right here. So, you know, all things considered, this edged out the other ones by a little bit. But keep in mind, this isn't the only tricep exercise I'm doing. I'm also doing an overhead tricep exercise. I'm also doing some sort of triceps focused compound exercise like a tricep dip or something in order to train the lateral and medial head of the triceps. Now with that said, if you're trying to take the guesswork out of getting to your fitness goals and you're like, Tyler, you know, it's great you're telling me all your favorite exercises, but I want everything consolidated in a proper workout routine so I can just focus on executing and getting to my dream physique, then I highly recommend you apply to my exclusive one-on-one fitness coaching program where I do literally just that. I also provide nutrition advice, give you example recipes on, okay, this is roughly what you should be eating to more or less hit your goals while still enjoying what you eat because the food recipes are actually pretty good. On top of that, there's weekly check-ins as well as the ability to ask any questions you might have. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely apply in the link in the description. I would love to have you in there. Let's get some gains. Moving on to the fourth muscle group, and that is going to be the biceps. Of course, my favorite bicep exercise is going to be the unilateral dumbbell preacher curl. Now, I've been raving about this exercise for a long time, and I know a lot of you guys might cringe for the fact that I'm straightening my arm, but let me tell you, you can completely do this safely if you're using weight that you can handle, and if you normally train in this length position. So if you're gonna do something like this, definitely start with light weight. Get comfortable with going all the way down before you start lowering the weight. But the reason why I like this exercise so much is a couple things. For one thing, this is gonna be a lengthen focused bicep exercise, meaning the hardest part is gonna be in this bottom part of the range of motion, where the biceps have the best leverage to do the act of elbow flexion, the act of bending your elbow. In other words, the biceps compared to the brachialis and the brachioradialis, which are other muscles that also contribute in the act of bending your elbow, the biceps are going to be the most active in the bottom half of the range of motion. So you want to choose an exercise that ideally has the hardest part be in that bottom part where the target muscle is going to be most active, right? So hope that makes sense for y'all. On top of that, I think out of any variation, this is the most stable type of curl you can do. Like if you think about just doing a standing bicep curl, it's very easy for you to kind of swing, either use momentum with your hips or just have your arms kind of have your shoulders move back and forth like this, right? Well, using a preacher curl pretty much eliminates all of that, because if you're doing it properly like how I am and you're like really hunkering yourself in, you're using your offhand to pull yourself into the preacher curl so that you really can focus on just bending your elbow. There's no cheating here whatsoever. You don't want to cheat on preacher curl. What other bicep curl variation are you able to get something as stable as that? So you tell me down in the comments. Let me know if you've been agreeing with all the exercises I've been choosing on this list. And a lot of these exercises, you see me do them for a long, long time. And there's a good reason why I'm continuing to do them. Because they're actually good. I'm not choosing some trendy BS just because it looks cool or anything. Like, no, these are exercises I would actually do. Now you might be wondering why dumbbell versus barbell. Now sure, you can use an easy curl bar when you're doing a preacher curl, but personally for me, I find it a little bit less comfortable on my elbows. And with the easy curl bar, it's easy to kind of have your elbows start drifting outward, which can kind of give you some elbow pain. So I personally recommend just doing it unilaterally. I can actually really pull myself into the bench so it's a little more stable. And overall, it feels a little bit more comfortable because again, I can like freely manipulate the angle of my body so that I'm doing this in the most comfortable way possible for me. So with that said, that is the fourth exercise. Moving on to the fifth one. All right, fifth favorite exercise is gonna be the lying cable lateral raise. Now, when it comes to shoulders, of course, there's like 3 different options I can choose. I can do a front delt exercise, side delt exercise, rear delt exercise. I personally enjoy training side delts the most. And if I'm gonna train side delts, the best exercise in my opinion is gonna be this lying cable lateral raise. Not because it looks super extra and everyone's gonna be staring at you. I'm not doing some freaky without any gains. The reason I do this exercise is it is the most stable way you can actually train your side delts, in my humble opinion. You might think, well, for side delts, I don't even have to go that heavy. Why do I have to care about stability? I find that out of all the different muscles out there that you can train, the side delts are the trickiest to properly train while still keeping good form. Meaning on a lateral raise, like as you approach failure, I notice that I tend to get either traps involved or like I'm using momentum or I feel my bicep. Something weird usually happens. But with this variation, because I'm stable, I really am able to focus on just grinding through the rep. And I think that's something that's very hard to do. You can't really grind through a dumbbell lateral raise. Maybe you can use a bent arm machine, that can be a good option too, but I personally prefer this one because it feels more ergonomic. You can manipulate the resistance profile to make it more length and focus by just scooting the bench forward. There's a lot more options here, so that is why this is my favorite shoulder exercise. On to exercise number 6. All right, now moving on to the 6th exercise, we'll move on to the forearm muscles. Now, there's a lot of different muscles in the forearm, but I think the biggest bang for your buck is focusing on the brachioradialis, which we can do that by doing a pronated grip curl, otherwise known as the reverse curl. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do reverse curl, but I think the best way is this lazy man's unilateral reverse curl done on a seated row machine. Now, with this exercise, ideally you can make it even better by using a cuff around your hand. I'll show a video of me doing it this way. I highly recommend using the cuff because it takes your grip out of the movement. On any sort of reverse curl, your grip will always be a limiting factor just because of the nature of a pronated grip. With that said, let's move on to the 7th exercise. Okay, now moving on to the 7th exercise, we're gonna be talking about the abs, and the best ab exercise, in my humble opinion, is gonna be a cable-weighted ab crunch. Now, I feel like people either love this exercise or hate it, and the people that hate it are probably doing it wrong. The biggest mistake you can do on this exercise is moving your hips like this. You're not really gonna be training your abs doing it this way because, well, your hips are moving back and forth. Instead, you need to stabilize your hips in place when you're doing this exercise. There's no one on this planet that can tell me they don't feel their abs working when they're doing it properly like that, okay? Now with that said, it requires a little bit of finesse and playing around to actually do this exercise properly. That's the only gripe. And of course, you have to use equipment, unlike a lot of other ab exercises where you can pretty much just do it on the floor. But I like this exercise for a couple of reasons. For one thing, it can be a length and focus exercise if you keep yourself more horizontal, but the nature of being able to manipulate the resistance profile is always a plus in my book. Now, second factor is it's also very stable. Now, you might be thinking, well, why do you need a stable exercise if you're training abs? Because isn't your abs gonna be playing a role in core stability? Well, the thing is, the main function of your abs in this case is gonna be spinal flexion. So with that said, you wanna take out other factors that might make the act of doing spinal flexion as well as spinal extension harder. So like any other muscle out there, try to maximize hypertrophy, a stable exercise that allows you to actually focus on the target muscle and train it with this specific function in mind, in this case, spinal flexion for the abs, is gonna be a better exercise. But the last thing is just progression. There's not a lot of ab exercise out there where you can easily progress with weight. Usually you have to do more reps. Like, you know, if you're doing an ab crunch or a hanging leg raise, the usual way to progress on those exercises is usually just adding more reps. But with this, you can still make it an efficient workout, stay within the 6 to 10 rep range while still progressing by adding weight. So that's the best ab exercise. Let's move on to lower body. All right, so those were the upper body exercises. Now moving on to the lower body ones. And the answer is none of them. They all suck. All right, thank you guys so much for watching this video.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I'm just playing. Now, I'm gonna speed run through lower body because I don't have access to all the equipment, but for quads, my favorite exercise is definitely gonna be a pendulum squat. You're able to get the deepest stretch on the quads on that exercise. It's actually very engaging, also very stable too, unlike the, let's say, a barbell squat, which I personally like as well, but not gonna lie, as I get older, the barbell squat becomes a lot harder to do because of how much it taxes my lower back. Now, moving on to hamstrings, my pick is gonna be the seated hamstring curl. Now, I could have chosen a deadlift. I used to like deadlifting back in the day, but to be completely honest, the seated hamstring curl, when done correctly, allows me to train the hamstrings in pretty much complete isolation, unlike with a deadlift that's a compound movement. But on top of that, I prefer the seated variation over the lying variation because you can get a better stretch when you're in that seated position. And definitely when it comes to lower body, length and focus training becomes especially important because the quads and hamstrings are both exercises that tend to benefit from stretch-mediated hypertrophy. So I think it's especially important to choose more length and focus exercises and get a good deep range of motion when you're selecting exercises for the quads and hamstrings. Next, we got the glutes. Now, my favorite exercise for the glutes is going to be a hip thrust. No other exercise allows me to feel the glutes as much as on a hip thrust. I personally like doing it on a Smith machine, and yes, I know the hip thrust is technically a short and focused glute exercise, and some people say you're better off doing some sort of lunge or squat pattern where you're training the glutes in a more lengthened position. But ultimately, I like the hip thrust because, again, you're able to pretty much isolate the glutes. It's also super stable, and a lot of people probably don't want to squat twice. The last but most important muscle of them all is the calves. That was a joke. Now, with the calves, I prefer doing a straight-legged calf raise. In my personal opinion, the best way to do it is when you're seated on a leg press machine. I'm not talking about the seated calf raise machine. I'm talking about just doing a normal straight knee calf raise on a leg press. That's my favorite variation. But with that said, those were all of the best exercises for every single muscle group. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and get a better understanding of my thought process on how I choose what's a good exercise and what's not. Again, thank you guys so much for 1 million subscribers. Don't forget to hit the like button. It would be much appreciated. It's the easiest way to support my page. Hit subscribe to level up your physique. And I'll see y'all. And don't forget to hit the bell notification to get these videos right to you. And just because I hit 1 million doesn't mean we're gonna stop here. I'm gonna continue making these banger content. So make sure you're subscribed and make sure you got the notifications down for that. I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.